Thank you, Angie. I think Angie's special, folks, to be honest with you. Her story and Wayne's particular journey have just been so impressive. And I remember bringing different people to the events, and I always got great comments on Angie and especially on Wayne. I don't know, years ago, Ernie Marinoni spoke at one of our events in the past. Ernie was in his 90s and was one of the most amazing athletes I'd ever met in my life. And he was so impressed with Wayne when Wayne gave his talk. And Ernie was a very straight shooting guy, and he said, "That's a good fella. I like that guy." So I do too as well. A little bit different, start off a little bit different than what I had planned on doing, but actually, Nancy, you inspired me, and it really plays into the benefit of Enterprime. Nancy talked about all the different things that happened when she was taking not only the Delta E, but the Enterprime, and you would wonder, what could do that? Why would it be so important taking a little bit, truthfully, of something like an Enterprime and getting the results that she was getting? And I have to refer to someone I interviewed years ago, Dr. Bruce Ames. He's at the Children's Hospital in Oakland, and he's one of the world's leading nutritional biochemists. He's also a leader in the Oxygen Club. It's a group of world-renowned scientists who study antioxidant activity in the body. And one of the ideas that he proposed was called the triage hypothesis. It was based on the idea that the body really just has a couple of high priorities. One is biological, and that's reproduction. You know, the body will go to great lengths to reproduce, and if you look around the world, there's a lot of people who aren't in really great shape or are still reproducing. You know, as long as you can do that, that's your biological imperative. When that's not going on, the other, which is the most critical, is just to survive that day. Unlike financial planning, where you're putting away money for the future, the body doesn't put away anything. It takes whatever it has, whatever it needs to survive that day. Doesn't care about tomorrow. That's not important. It's going to do what it needs to survive. Now, if you're taking in enough nutrients to not only survive, but to also take care of emergencies that may prop up, then you've got an insulation against further problems. But when you don't, again, the body will use, and the example that Dr. Bruce Ames used in his research was vitamin K. Fascinating nutrient. You've got vitamin K1, which is what we're most familiar with, which is an anticoagulant to keep you from bleeding to death. But it turns out there's also a vitamin K2, and this comes from fermented foods and also animal foods. And there's the phyloquinone, which is the vitamin K1, and there's the metaquinone, which is the vitamin K2 and its analogs. This includes vitamin K4, vitamin K6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, those kind of things. But the one that's most researched is the MK7. Now, that particular part of the vitamin K process helps take calcium and deposit it in the bones. If you don't have enough of the vitamin K2, it's going to end up in the arteries. And that's what you don't want, because that'll eventually plug them up and lead to heart disease. But if you don't have enough of all those different vitamin K functions, it's going to use everything it's got for that day to survive. Now, eventually, you're going to run out of surplus. You're going to run out of the different things that your body stored as a result of your food or your genetic inheritance, and that's when all of a sudden problems show up, or you're unable to take care of some of the things that were resolved when Nancy took the vitamin or took the Enterprime. That's because of the phytochemicals and the various analogs of the nutrients that it contains. It's putting back into the body reserves, so that when something occurs, some type of crisis, the body can not only take care of its needs for that day, but also be supplied to get ready for the next day. And it's a very, very important consideration. And that's why so little of this product can have such profound effects. We don't always get all of the things that we need. Our habits, the way we eat, the way we prepare food, the lack of exercise, those factors all come into the queue, so to speak, in terms of what kind of surplus the body has to deal with today and to deal with tomorrow. So again, that's part of the reason, probably the main reason, why Enterprime is so effective, the way it's prepared. Okay, just wanted to get that one in because it made such sense when I was listening to her and understand just how it could have such a ripple effect in the body. The other part of the talk, Arlene touched on something that actually happened to me, and that's in terms of medical problems or medical diagnoses or a lack of medical diagnoses, what she called medical omissions that can lead to various problems. Now, loved my mother. My mother was an amazing woman, passed away. I still think of her every day. But she also passed on a couple of things to me, which I didn't know I had to deal with. I have an inherited genetic defect in terms of a protein enzyme defect. It's called G6PD. Turns out there's a lot of people in the world that have this. Women, because of your chromosome makeup, don't get affected even if you have it. Men are more susceptible. Mostly it's in the Middle East and Africa. And I remember one doctor who was not the most sensitive guy in the world comes in, and I remember when I was going through this, and I said, well, doctor, I have the G6PD deficiency. He says, you're not African American. And I said, well, I understand that, but I still have it, it turns out. I started feeling kind of funny last summer. I was having these kind of fuzzy feelings or just out of sort feelings in my head, and I couldn't quite figure it out because I'm very familiar with my body. I kind of know what's going on, when it's going on, but I couldn't figure that out. And I called up my health practitioner and I said, something's not right. I just don't know what's going on. I just don't feel as good as I should feel with all the things that I was doing. I was under a tremendous amount of stress, and I didn't really know it. I didn't know why. This enzyme, which had been asymptomatic in my body my whole life, for some reason was being triggered. What it does is to destroy your red blood cells. If you don't have this, then you have the regular protection going on in the body. You have the hemoglobin levels where it should be, which means that the red blood cells are being distributed through the body and sending oxygen to the areas where you need it. Well, that was part of why I was feeling this out of sorts, because at times I wasn't getting the oxygen to the rest of my body that I should. Well, it got pretty extreme to the point where I woke up one morning and I have Bell's palsy. And I felt it on one side of my face. Now, in my opinion, the reason that manifested itself was because of the stress my body was under from this activation or deactivation of the G6PD deficiency. So I went to the doctor, and here's where it gets interesting in terms of medical omission. They really wanted to help me. They were concerned, obviously, about what was going on, and they prescribed a certain treatment for me, which I did for a week. On a Saturday, I woke up, I was almost comatose. And what was very disturbing, I think it would be for anybody, my urine was black. I mean, it wasn't dark, it was black. It was just like India ink. Turns out, those were dead red blood cells that were being destroyed because of the treatment I was getting at the doctor's office. So I drove myself to the emergency ward, which was problematic even in itself, just getting over there. And of course, once you get into the room, I all of a sudden meet all these people I know. Oh, you're Karen Osler, how are you? I'm wonderful. I always come to the emergency ward when I'm feeling wonderful, So you got to be nice, and I was nice. Can't smile because of the Bell's palsy. My head's just blowing up. Got black urine. I mean, I'm just in great shape here, So they do a few tests and they say, okay, we're going to put you in the hospital. Well, that was a 9-day ordeal. 3 blood transfusions, an operation on a biopsy and a lymph node because they wanted to rule out cancer before they figured out what was going on. They do the test, you've got that deficiency. This at least explains why your hemoglobin is so low. Normal hemoglobin is in the 13 to 17 range. I was 5. I was almost out of it, a little bit. If I had kept doing the treatment they were doing for me, believe me, it wouldn't be me talking to you here today. So after those 9 days, finally my hemoglobin level goes up. The people at the doctor's office are apologizing profusely, and they're my friends. And so, unlike what Arlene said, I'm not going to go to an attorney because these are my buddies. But nonetheless, I was almost dead. Now, brings up a point. We're all trying to be as healthy as possible, obviously. We do whatever we can do, but we cannot always count on life's challenges. How you survive the challenge is almost as important. It is as important as to why it happened in the first place. So whatever you're doing on a daily basis to maintain your health, that will be a large determinant of how well you recover after they get through. I lost 15 pounds in 9 days. That was a lot, and a lot of that was muscle. And thank God I had the muscle to begin with, or I would have been even in worse shape because I had kind of prepared my body for what was happening. And that's part of what we have to do to prepare ourselves for any kind of those challenges that may take place. So we understand the importance, the real importance of diet. We understand the importance of Enterprise. And incidentally, also, I love Enterprise, but this is probably my favorite. I like the MPX 100. There was a study done recently. It was a small study, but it really set the science world on fire. They did 3 supplements that extended their age or lowered their age in 1 month by 2.5 years. The 3 things they used, one was metformin, which is the most widely prescribed anti-diabetic drug. It helps with blood sugar. It's what they call an insulin mimic. Those of you who've read some of the work on the development of MPX 100 know that this is a better form, in my opinion, of metformin without the side effects. It's going to do much of the same thing in terms of helping your body control blood sugar, in a sense mimicking what happens when you fast. When you fast, your body doesn't secrete insulin. You're not going to deposit it as fat. You're going to be burning energy, which is why fasting is the -- 1 anti-aging strategy that's being employed today around the world. The other part of the equation was DHEA, a hormone, the master hormone as they call it, that's responsible for producing many of the other hormones in the body. And then the third component of this whole thing was growth hormone, insulin, human growth hormone. Now, the problem with human growth hormone is while it has some very positive effects, it can also have some side effects like diabetes. So you can do that. You can go to the store. You can find what's called growth hormone secretagogues. And these are usually a collection of amino acids or other substances that help the body to produce its own, because you never stop producing growth hormone. Unlike testosterone in men or estrogen for women, this is something that your body produces from the pituitary gland, but it doesn't always get released. So if you want to do your own little anti-aging experiment, you go get 25 to 50 milligrams of DHEA, again, over the counter. You take MPX, and at the same time, the growth hormone secretagogue. And maybe you can get some true anti-aging effects from all that's happening. Now, the other part of the equation, especially for those of us who are in the upper quartile of aging, middle-aged or above, if you want to maintain your body, and if you want to have something more than just a cosmetic effect, you are going to seriously consider adding strength training to your regimen. A recent survey, and again, I follow the literature very closely on this, and especially anything related to strength training, because that's one of my passions. The information and the research from Harvard, the Institute of Health, National Institute of Health, all the procedures, John Hopkins, they're all pointing out that strength training is more than just a cosmetic activity. It is literally the one function you can do that will allow your body to have the opportunity to move, to lift, to get around in life, to improve the quality of your life so that you don't suffer the problems of what's called frailty, which means, again, a loss of muscle mass or function, or in its extreme state, what's called sarcopenia. This is where, again, you lose muscle strength, you lose muscle size, you lose muscle tension. And when that starts to happen, it affects every aspect of your life. Your digestion is all tied to muscular activity. Your brain activity, Arlene talked about things that you can do. I think word puzzles are great, but 1,000 times better is strength training. Strength training, and this is a very interesting part, actually improves neuronal activity in the brain. You saw in the little video about neurons, right? Well, guess what? When you're strength training, you are actually increasing the activity of these neurons, and at the same time, strength training is going to improve what's called slow wave brain function. The slow wave brain function is very important not only for rest and recuperation, but it helps to recharge your brain activities. In a sense, the brain is like your muscle. Once you do this and you do the strength training, this neuronal activity goes through with the slow wave training what's called supercompensation. And this supercompensation takes place because when you strength train, you're creating lactate or lactic acid, the so-called burn. Well, it turns out this burn is something the brain loves. The brain takes this lactate, and that's what stimulates the slow wave brain function, stimulates your ability, again, to recharge all the brain's activities, as well as the muscular activity. So we talked also, I mentioned the growth hormone. Best way to get growth hormone is, 1, to fast, number 2, strength train, because that's when you produce a lot of the human growth hormone. It's an incredible opportunity at that point. So to avoid the problems of sarcopenia, and once you get to sarcopenia, you're in big trouble. You're in big trouble. By that time, you've lost a massive amount not only of muscle, and the ability even to burn calories. A pound of muscle will burn about 7 or 8 calories a day, a pound of muscle. A pound of fat burns 2 or 3. So the more muscle you have on your body, even when you're not doing anything, although you had to do something to get the muscle, obviously, but the more muscle you have, the more calories you burn at rest. So it's an incredible opportunity in order to help reconfigure the body. This particular type of activity then also refers to bone strength. Now, you can't reverse osteoporosis. Once you've lost that bone, it's pretty much what's going on. But strength training will stop further deterioration in the bone. So it is an incredibly important activity. So you got the brain health, you got the heart health, head health, all from doing something that requires your body to engage in this supercompensation activity. Because the same thing we're talking about, the slow wave brain function, that supercompensation with the lactate is going to feed the muscles to get them to respond. And the reason you get the benefits is because when you stress the body through some type of strength training, the body compensates by getting stronger. That's the defense mechanism. So that's what you have to do. And I will say this, as important as cardiorespiratory activity is, what we commonly refer to as aerobics, as you get older, strength training is much more important, much more valuable in the body than is aerobic activity. It's all good. You'd like to do it all, but that doesn't mean that you're doing the best thing if it's just walking, for example. Walking is a wonderful activity, but if you want to keep your function, if you want to be able to lift things, to squat, to get up off of a chair without assistance, you need the strength training. Now, part of the nutritional properties of maintaining your muscle, and again, I hate that expression, as you get older, but as you get older, you'll find that the protein needs of your body, far from lessening, increase. You need more protein, or specifically, you need more of the essential amino acids in your body as you age than you did when you were younger. And here's why. You have two responses in the system. This is a dynamic interplay between the process of muscle protein synthesis, MPS, muscle protein breakdown. This is going on every day, all the minutes, hours of your day. It's between what's called anabolism, building up, and catabolism, breaking down. So if you've got enough amino acids in your bloodstream from the food that you've been eating, the body will use those amino acids to start helping to repair your muscles, to help repair your bones, to help repair your brain activity, your liver, your kidney, your gallbladder. Everything revolves around these amino acids now being sent out through the system to help in the repair process. All of them, the most important for life, without it you die, is protein. The Greek word protein is of first importance, and that is the key component here. So as you're getting older and you're not able to get enough of the protein and the amino acids, especially the essential amino acids, as part of this repair process, you can see the body's going to go to its next source. What is that? Your muscle. Muscle is a potent supply, reservoir of these amino acids. Well, that's what you don't want, because as you're starting to take away from the muscle, that's part of the process of frailty, or again, what they call sarcopenia, loss of muscle mass and strength. One of the key tests for that, which is really interesting, is your grip. Just being able to grab, like they say, you got a firm handshake. Well, you want a firm handshake, you want to be able to generate some type of effort, some type of power there, and that's the way they test a lot of these things to see if you're getting what you need. So the important thing is whichever form you get it in, and again, sometimes this gets lost in the whole political dialogue when you talk about increasing protein, because people on the plant-based diet think, oh, that's a code word for animals, that you got to have animal protein. No, it's not necessary. You can get it from any number of sources, whichever it happens to be. But you do need more. And you need more of, you eat protein to get essential amino acids. Essential amino acids, if you look at the term, they're essential. The body gets the rest of them from the food we eat, but it has to have the essential amino acids to start this process of muscle protein synthesis. So what's the key here? Takeaway: exercise, especially strength training, using the proper amount of protein every day to get what you need in terms of producing this positive effect. And the other is getting enough of the nutrients in the body to not only take care of what you have been doing exercise-wise, but to also supply the body with the reservoir of nutrients it needs to take care of emergencies so that you recover well. Greg and I have similar stories in terms of how we had to, Greg went for a lot longer than mine, but at the same time, we still had to recover properly after we had been completed with that particular process. I can still feel it every once in a while. I can still feel it was like, when I was younger, I'd never had poison oak in my life. And I went out one spring, early spring, out around Folsom Lake, and I noticed I had a few of these little spots. It turns out it was poison oak. So I went to a doctor I knew at the time who was into some type of a immunology, and he said, oh, here, we're going to give you a little bit of the poison oak so the body can build up an immunity. They miscalculated. From that little spot, all of a sudden, my whole arm now is broke out of this thing. Like an idiot, I go back. I say, well, look, what happened here? Oh, well, we got the wrong dose. Here, take this. Boom! I got it all over me. It took several years for my body to build up an immune system, immune response, a proper immune response, so that didn't happen. Unfortunately, I think with this G6PD deficiency, what I've done is loosen the tiger, and I've got to be kind of careful to make sure that whatever the heck got it going before, activated it, somehow, I don't know how I'm going to do this since I don't know what activated it in the first place, but somehow I'm going to have to be prepared to deal with that as well. We all have to do that, right? This is an imperfect vehicle. It's an unwieldy vehicle as you think about it. As we get along, we'd like to have everything working perfectly all the time. That's not logical. It's not realistic. But what is realistic is putting together plans that help contain some of the processes that we have to go through if we're going to age. Arlene's talked about living to be 120. She probably won't live to be 120. If we can get up to 100, that's a pretty good deal. That's 80%. There's still 80% lifestyle, 20% genetics. The super centenarians, the 110s, the 115s, those are people who have 80% of the genes they need and 20% of the lifestyle. They all love to have those stories. Here's a person that's 120 and they smoke every day and drink, gallon of whiskey and do whatever. And we all think, oh, great, I'm going to live to be 120. Nah, you don't have those 80%. Most of us here don't count on it. Try to do the best you can. Look at your Endoprime, look at MPX, look at Delta E, look at all the various products that they have at Impex to help you as we go through life, as we take care of the struggles that we all have to deal with. Thank you so much. I appreciate your attendance. Yes. Well, they've set official standards, but they don't necessarily take into account the age and activity. But usually it's 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. But a good number would be half your weight in protein. Some bodybuilders take a pound of protein for every pound of body weight because it's essential in terms of building muscle. And I will say this too, that a lot of the misconceptions we had about protein, they'd say, oh, you can't take too much protein, it's going to damage your kidneys. That's not true. It hasn't been borne out at all in the research. If you already have a kidney problem, yes, it's not a good idea to increase the protein. But if you don't, it won't bother that. It won't result in loss of bone. It'll result in increased bone mass. But just make sure, again, you get the quality. The only caveat I would say about plant protein is that maybe you have to do 10% more plant protein than you would with animal protein, because the animal protein is a little higher biological value. But again, you can do it any way that it all adds up in terms of what's good for you. MPX, DHEA, and growth hormone. A growth hormone secretagogue. For instance, arginine and ornithine are often sold to help the body produce growth hormone. They've got better formulas. I would do a little research online. You could take, the prescription, but that's expensive and it's an injection, and I don't think you want to do that. But those three things were part of the whole life extension advance. I don't think so, to be honest with you. I would just get a better form of the whey is a little more complicated because some wheys get taken care of faster in the body. Some of them are longer lasting. Whey caseinate will last longer, so like if you take it, it'll burn through the night. Hydrolysate is also a very good form, but as far as the estrogen, and that's a very complex subject as it is. Some bodybuilders I know want high estrogens because it does help with muscle growth, believe it or not. It's just that when you take testosterone, for example, high doses of testosterone, then you can have the conversion. Testosterone will convert to estrogen, but even then, that's sometimes problematic. And I would say, I know Arlene said she doesn't take the hormone therapy, but for guys, I would seriously consider finding a good hormone specialist because, again, testosterone is an important part of the aging process. And I don't get this whole thing where they say, well, I want to be natural. Well, I want to use technology that's positive and shows me a benefit. And if that's going to do it, why not? Take advantage of what's available. Strength training exercises that work on the bigger muscles of the body are the most productive. The legs, chest, and back would be the most productive in terms of getting the best effect for strength training. And the legs especially, because when you think about it, that's so important in terms of everything that you do. The walking, the lifting, standing, any of those kind of things. And believe me, if you lose that muscle in your legs, in the hips, in the lower back, you fall and break a bone or break your hip, the older you are and the less muscle you have on your body, the greater the odds are that you're not going to get up again. You go to bed, as an older person, you go to bed for a week. In a sense, you have lost years of life expectancy. It's one of the reasons the astronauts are having such a problem with extended space flight, because they have no gravity to exert pressure on the bones. And if you already have bone loss and you have to go to bed, you're going to accelerate it to a great extent and becomes dangerous, deadly. So being as active as possible for as long as possible is the key. Just don't get to a point where you've lost so much muscle that you can't replace it fast enough to help with the healing process.